to need to gather a few materials before you begin. First of all, your wool. I do prefer a merino. It seems to felt very, very nicely into a successful hood. You are going to need soap. I prefer Castile soap. You can get it in a liquid and or bar soap variety. It is an oil-based soap, and I really do feel that it helps the fibers to blend together better than a lot of other soaps. However, if you don't have that on hand and don't feel like waiting to purchase it, Dawn Dish soap will do the exact same job, and you'll still have a successful hat. In order to felt your hood, you will need something to actually put it in to agitate your wool together. Some people use bamboo sheets like this one. This is the stuff that you put under a carpet in order to make it not move when you walk on it. I don't know what they call it. So I'll find that out and I'll put it in the video. This is what I've actually been using for years. You will need a water bottle with which to mix water and soap together. You will need the actual pattern for your hat. I do recommend a very, very tightly woven canvas or leather so that your material, when you're agitating it, doesn't felt to this particular patterning piece. Lastly, I do recommend that you have towels on all sides of you so that you can keep water in its place and not on your floor. All right, so we are going to show you how to start setting up for your wool hat. This takes a ton of layers, but the ultimate product will be very, very beautiful and will become a very, very firm and solid material when you are done. So the first part of this process is that you are going to lay horizontal lines of your wool very, very lightly, very, very wispily across your pattern. So you can see Emma is doing that right here. You want to leave a tiny bit of overlap right here that you will actually spread. When we flip the form over, you will use that to be brought around in order to hold your wool on the other side together. I'll explain that more as we get there.
And for the second layer, we are going to be doing right on top some rainbow layers as we just apply it like this, exactly on this.
All right, so now that you have laid down your horizontal layer of wool, as well as the one that I just call rainbow shape, you have got to flip this over in order to start creating your other side. So what I do in order to flip it over is that I will lay another piece of your carpet underlayment on there and then flip accordingly. Everything stays on there very, very nice. You won't lose any wool. You can see what happens there. And now you will notice those wispies that we laid very, very specifically out. What we are going to do now is wet our hands very, very slightly. You don't want these to necessarily felt together yet, but you are going to reach under and you are going to fold them over. The reason why you make them so wispy and not very thick is because you will end up with a very, very heavy seam in your hat if you make them thick. I don't want there to be a visible seam in my hat. I have not in my research seen any visible seams, so I try to make them as uniform as possible. So the next steps will be to repeat the process again. You will have a horizontal layer of wool, and then you will start that rainbow layer of wool again. You're going to flip and repeat this process at a minimum 6 times for a summer weight Bycocket, and at a maximum 12 times for a heavier winter weight Bycocket. So now we have 6 layers on each side of our pattern. Looks like this when you pick it up. I would not attempt to pick it up if you have not done one of these before. Sometimes it can get a little bit out of shape when you do. If you wanted to have a two-tone Bycocket, you will see them a lot in period images. All you would have to do at this point is to get another color of wool and start your process over again. But here's the thing, you want to make sure to build up your layers thick enough to where none of the blue will come through. So it's not a process where, say, you can just put like 2 layers down and have a two-tone hat. I would absolutely recommend doing probably the same amount of layers and taking it up to 12 layers on each side. So another 6 on top of each side.
Okay, So what you want to do is you want to start off with hot water, and what you're going to do is you want to put the Castile soap into the hot water so it does not bubble up too much. And then you're going to put on your lid. Kind of shake it up a little bit.
All right, so here is how I set up my area before felting. I put towels that connect to each other on all sides because I do like to be, I like to have a surface that is up high because this is pretty intensive. You will be felting for probably over a half an hour to really achieve the look that you want. And I'll take some progress pictures as we go because this will change a lot. It'll start by kind of spreading out and becoming larger, and then as everything knits together, it turns into an actual fabric. It turns into a truly felted wool. So for the first part, you have got your soapy water, and this looks a little scary, but I hold the sides in as I start to pour this hot water and soapy mixture onto our wool. So I'm going to do this, and you are going to pretty much soak your wool. Next part, I'll start with my hands, and then Emma and I will be doing this in shifts. So here's the deal. You want to be very, very careful with your edges because, again, as I said earlier, they will start to form very, very large veins if you're not careful, and they're difficult to get out even when you're felting. Some imperfections, as you felt, they will come out. Some of them won't. So you want to be very, very careful with your edges. I like to kind of pull them in. And you can see we're getting soaked here. You have to be gentle with your wool in the very beginning stages. As it becomes more of a fabric, you will start to agitate more and more. So the first part of this is just patting lightly. I would pat lightly on each side for about 5 minutes. So now Emma's going to demonstrate how to flip our wool. There you go. You've got that underlayment. You're going to lay that over top. She pats it down nicely, and then she can reach under, grab both layers, and flip that bad boy over. Don't get too overzealous with your flip, or you can get fairly wet. There you go. Now she has flipped it, straightening it out. And when she lifts that up, there you go. It's a nice bubbly side of that hat, or soon to be hat. So she'll straighten it all out, and she will start the tapping process and swirling process over again. So you'll see Emma's going to do some different methods. So she is doing light pats. She'll also do some swirls and kind of press down with a little bit more pressure. So very soon, this will start to kind of take on a really different look. And we'll make sure to stop and show you that when we get to that point. But it's quite a bit of felting up until that point. So one of the stories that led me to felting in this particular way was of Saint Clement. And there's another story that follows St. Christopher. While they are escaping persecution, they are running miles and miles and miles to get away from the people that would try to harm them. And as they went, they started pulling little bits of wool off of the fences where sheep had rubbed up against them, and they would tuck them in their shoes in order to help some of the pain that they were experiencing. And ultimately, at the end of their journey, what they created was a felted sock. So this kind of uses their method, if you will, with wool and perspiration being water, and then of course agitation being those footsteps. So the same premise here, but we are adding soap. One thing that I do is small taps that draw your edges in, because I don't want it to get too large, because then it will not work on your form. So this is one technique that I do use. Also, you will notice that I am leaving the brim, I'm leaving the edge off of our actual pattern. I have seen people, really masterful felters, actually what they'll do is they will felt past the pattern, and then they will cut it open eventually to form a nice clean edge on their hat successfully. All right, now I'm going to start to add more pressure to our sides. More and more pressure. Sometimes I'll take a glass piece. I have a glass lid to a jar, and I will use that as well. Really, you can use lots of different things to keep everything smooth and working well. So, more agitation. Probably another 5 minutes of this deeper patting and agitating on each side. All right, so next thing, when you can tell that your materials are starting to mesh together, you can take your carpet underlayment right here, or your roll of bamboo, lay it over your form, like so, and you can start to do some different agitation. So one thing that I like to do is I like to take both and roll them up. Roll it, roll, roll. You can roll them up, roll it out, and you will notice that it doesn't harm the hat at all. You can just use the bamboo as well if you want to go ahead and get rid of the carpet underlayment, and use this to roll. You can use 2 sheets, you can use 1 sheet. Just make sure to keep everything soapy. Here's another thing I'll do. Let's go back and forth with it. Bring it forward, roll it out, bring it forward, roll it out. Sometimes I'll just use the hat itself in this motion as well. You will know if it is not ready for this portion because it'll actually start pulling pieces of felt away, but you can see that this is not, okay? It's not pulling any of the wool, so we're at a point to where we can be a little bit more tough with our wool and pattern. In a few minutes, we will actually remove our pattern, but we won't do that quite yet. We've got a little bit more time before we make that happen. All right, so as you can see, especially with agitating it with the bamboo mat, things are getting really tight and our material is really starting to take form. You will notice that there no wool is pulling away when it's lifted up, and it's kind of changed in consistency. It's very tight together, and the entire wool form that we've created is pulling in on each other. So that is a fantastic thing. That's where we want to be. I'm going to continue agitating for about another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to start the rinsing process where we shock it in hot and cold water. We are now going to start rinsing the soap off of the form that will make our hat. I actually like to do cold, hot, cold, and hot. Kind of shocking the fibers, if you will. It seems to keep things nice and tightly together within the actual fabric itself. It's your hood coming to life here. I try not to handle it too aggressively, but you can see, you can squeeze it out and your fabric looks beautiful and like it's come together very well. You've got your form. The next thing you're going to do is get it super hot, pretty much as hot as you can stand it. This is going to loosen your fibers and allow you to actually form it over the form. Now Emma has formed before, so I'm going to let her take over at this point. One thing that I like to do personally so that I don't accidentally snag fibers or things like that is I like to put a little bit of soap on my hands when I do form. So this is nice and hot. Give that a good squeeze out, and I will go ahead and put it over the top of this to where Emma can get started.
We're going to first start off with a couple of drops on my hands. And we're just going to immediately start pushing down.
Top to bottom.
That's top to around here, which is the bottom. You're going to get weird sounds because it's wet.
Just a part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And yep, that's perfect. And you can go ahead and start pulling it down as well. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a muscle and stretch to get it over your form, but it's not a bad thing. Keeps your hat with the shape that you like. Now this is made specifically for the Bycocket. And the reason why it's so long, so you can see like the hat's not going all the way to the bottom, but the reason why it is so long is that you can actually start to form your point for the Bycocket. Now, you may not want a Bycocket that's very, very pointed. In particular, my husband cannot stand a super pointy Bycocket, but I happen to love them. So you kind of get to choose how pointy you want that. So you can see Emma's done a beautiful job forming this over our form. It's got a beautiful crown. And so now what you would do, and I'm just going to eyeball it, you would figure out the circumference of the head that you are making this for, and that's where you're going to figure out where you want to turn up your hat. So at this point, Emma and I are going to work our hat back up and begin turning up our brim. Let's do it, yeah, like this, taller in the back. So she's gonna make hers a little bit taller in the back. I forgot to put soap on my hands. The fabric's staying fine, but I just find that it really helps to keep everything slick and nice. Alright, perfect, beautiful. And so this is where you can actually start forming the shape that you want. And this one will have a nice medium crown. And here we are. You want to pull gently because you can still damage these fibers. It's pretty difficult to do so. It's a pretty tough substance once you're done. You can see I'm kind of dishing it out right here and pulling forward, and you want to make sure that you're actually getting it centered. So I'm going to pull it back over to the center a little bit more. Do you want yours pointy or more circular in the front?
Pointy.
Yeah. Because why not? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do a little bit more here. Look at the side of the shape. Looks like this. So you're starting to see that really the Bycocket shape form. This is when I also like to check and see if my brim is forming in a good place. I like to take the hat off wet and put it on my head sometimes as well, just to make sure it is how I like it. Emma, do you want to try on this wet Bycocket? All right. What do you think about that shape so far?
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
Mm-hmm.
Right
now,
buddy?
I'm just putting the sticky stuff now, so
That's a great idea.
it does not move around.
There you do. Okay, she's going to kind of shape it how she wants it. And it's really pliable. It's very malleable. Really, any shape that you could create, you could turn into a hat. That's looking really nice. Now you can pin this to your form if you feel like you need to, especially if you want a very, very long brim. You may bring it out and then pin it down. But I don't recommend leaving your pins in for a very, very long time because it will form rust. All right, let's see.
Super cute.
It's adorable.
Oh my god.
You look to the left and right for me. Just checking out the shape. It's absolutely adorable. Okay, you can go ahead and put it back on your form. And she can leave it on here to dry. Here's the cool thing. If for some reason she doesn't like the shape or wants to change it later, you can pull it right off. You can put it back in the hot water and you can reshape it.